Aircraft carriers.
Definition: the aircraft carrier crosses the most expensive pieces of weapon known to mankind, which is a floating ship that fixed-wing aircraft, conventional aircraft, and mobile-wing aircraft, helicopters, can take off from or land on because of its contain a runway or sufficient service of that. Carriers also have the ability to arm, repair, and refuel planes, helicopters, or both. The point of getting it: aircraft carriers and helicopters are defensive and offensive weapons. Because of the presence of the aircraft on them, aircraft carriers have a long fire range linked to the range of the aircraft carried on them and their ability of those aircraft to refueling. The ability of this aircraft make the accompanying fleet, usually consisting of service ships, submarines, and other ships, possess the ability to intercept air attacks and strike service ships and depth ships, in addition to bombing ground target and transportation forces by air or by land on beach. It is noticeable here that when the aircraft is added as a part of the bombing or targeting stages, the cost of the strike will be greatly reduced, as well as the ability to keep the carrier away from the engagement. When compared to the maximum range of the battleship, the barge bombing range reaches its maximum range of 43 kilometers, equivalent to 27 miles, and belong to the 18-inch 45 centimeters guns of the Yamamoto and Musashi. Someone may say that the era of the aircraft carriers has ended, and now we are living in the era of missile carriers. And the response is that these missiles can be carried by the aircraft on the carriers, and thus the superiority of the carriers will return again. What problem do aircraft carriers solve? Aircraft carriers are considered a moving airport, covering any place where the sea is located, so they protect the interests and the lines of the commercial far from the land of the country that own the carriers. An example of this is lines of oil, mineral, and good to America, Britain, and Japan. In addition, the carriers support and protect the lines of the countries that own them, and they can also solve the problem of passing through the airspace of countries that are neutral in the conflict through maneuvering across the sea. The accompanying combat formation, just to name a few. The combat formation of the U.S. fleet carriers consists of a unit ship of 1 cruiser, 2 destroyer, more than 1 submarine, and a number of support ships. As for the other types of carriers, they differ completely from one country to another, from fleet to fleet, according to the participant requirement that the user country deems. There are several types of aircraft carriers, and also dividing them is difficult because there are several classifications for them to divide. According to the Arab Forum for Defense and Armament, A. According to the type of the propulsion. 1. Fossil fuel. 1. Fossil fuel. First, oil steam propulsion. It's an engine that uses oil as a fuel to produce steam, and it's one of its advantage is that it's better for survival, running, and speed, but it needs more crew and better skilled, and the design of the engine is complex and high sizes. Second, diesel propulsion. It's an engine that uses diesel to produce steam, and it's one of its advantage is that it's cheap, easy to maintain, as well as high efficient. The only drawback is pollution and its need for supply. 2. Nuclear fuel. Through its propulsion is obtained by means of nuclear energy, which make it a very long range and high power. Its disadvantages are the difficulty of getting rid of the carrier after the end of its service and the possibility of radioactive and contamination. B. Classification according to the takeoff and landing of the aircraft. First, Katubar assisted takeoff but arrested recovery. Katubar. This type of takeoff system uses Katupol to take off the plane in order to make the plane's speed sufficient for takeoff. When landing, a hook is used hanging on the body of the plane, aiming to grab one of the wire attached to the landing strip. Carriers of this type are distinguished by the size of the aircraft on their surfaces, and they are characterized by their ability to support a flight of aircraft when a need for a long runway. Second, number 2, short takeoff but arrested recovery, STOBAR. In this system, it's distinguished by the presence of sky-jump services, which is an inclined service to help plane fly, located in the front of the carrier deck, and it's cheaper than using Katupol method. As for the method of landing, it's similar to the Katubar. 3. Short takeoff and vertical landing, known as STOVL. This kind of carriers planes take off vertically or through a short runway and land vertically. They do not need a Katupol, and the plane on their deck are either Harriers F-35B or Yak-38. Third, categorization by task. Number 1. The fleet carriers, CVN, sometimes called the super aircraft carriers, and it's usually the largest in the term of the size, and it's the command center for the group of ships and the largest piece of the Navy. It has a speed that makes it able to keep pace with the speed of destroyers and cruise ship. It is also distinguished by its ability to carry 50 aircraft carrier or more, as it's the largest size and displacement as well. One of the most important features is directed vicious offensive airstrikes and protection the fleet from air attacks. It's considered one of the most expensive carriers in the term of price, as well as the cost of the maintenance is high. All nuclear propelled carriers are of this type of carrier. 2. Light aircraft carrier, a name given to aircraft carriers that have the same mission as the fleet carriers, but smaller in size and fewer in terms of aircraft. The symbol of that kind of carrier is CVL. This type is not known to be nuclear for propulsion, but in general it uses a fossil fuel for its engine. Third type. 3. The escort aircraft carrier. The role of this carrier is to keep pace with the slow merchant ship and protect them. They are lightly armed and built from merchant ships that have been converted to war mission. These types of ship are considered easy to build and thus quickly enter service. They are also easy to sink due to their weak armed and modest speed. They are symbolized by CVE. In World War II, the escort aircraft carrier was hunting German submarine in the Atlantic Ocean and repelling aircraft as well. And little by little, it's began to operate independently from convoy in this mission. 4. Helicopter carrier is a name given to warship in which most or all of the aircraft on the board are helicopters. Because of the emergence of aircraft with the short and vertical takeoff and landing, for example the Harrier and the F-35. This led to difficulty of defining helicopter aircraft carrier. 5. The amphibious assault ship, known as AAS. It's a marine piece used to support the amphibious landing operation with a floating armor vehicle, landing boats, and hover vehicle. It is also used for airdrop for soldiers by helicopters. Its decks also used for launching aircraft with vertical takeoff and landing, such as Harrier fighters and F-35B. The number of fixed-wing aircraft is small because its main role is to support landing operation, and size often does not reach the size of the fleet carrier in terms of dimension or displacement, and it's distinguished from other aircraft carrier by the presence of gates to receive amphibious armored vehicle and landing ship. 6. The carriers that use in submarine warfare. ASW carrier. This ship is a part of the anti-submarine team, and it's considered one of the ships that appeared during the Cold War to replace the aircraft escort carrier. It appeared in response to the Soviet strategy after World War II, and it's a result of smallness of the Soviet Navy. The Soviet Union decided to focus on producing submarine on a large scale, which made the West Fleet, led by Britain and US, confront the Soviet Union with this type of carrier. This type of ship has two elements that reduce its role. The first of which is to increase the range of the patrol aircraft, which has got the ability to detect and destroy the submarine operated from conventional airport, and the ability of helicopters to operate on deck of other combat warships such as frigate destroyers and other service ships. Considered one of the naval vessels that are on the verge of disappearing from the world of weapon, except few of them working in the Japanese Navy. 7. Aircraft cruiser. 7. Aircraft cruiser. It is a marine piece whose purpose is to collect the specification of the aircraft carrier in addition to specification of the cruiser or battleship. During World War II, Japan rebuilt some ships and water cruisers to become aircraft carrier as a form of compensation for the decrease in the number of aircraft carrier after the Battle of Midway. This type of carrier considered extant by virtue of its superiority in fleet carriers and cruisers. 8. Balloon carriers. They are ships characterized by connection to a balloon by a rope or cable. They were widespread in the period between 1850 and 1920. Balloons are used for surveillance, and their era ended due to the entry of aircraft carriers. 9. Sea-controlled ships. One of the brainchild of the US Navy that was created to respond to submarines as escort ships to protect the naval convoy heading from North America to Europe in the events of a war on the European continent. The philosophy of proposing the establishment of this carrier was categorized by the presence of helicopter to confront the submarine and aircraft fighters to intercept Soviet bombers targeting cargo ship. The presence of large number of them was a result of cheap maintenance and ease to produce. History of carriers. The idea of aircraft carriers is not new today. Rather, it's an idea that developed over a period estimated at about 100 years or more. It's begun by attaching ships to balloons for the purpose of surveillance and reconnaissance. These ships appear in the second half of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. After the Wright brothers appeared with their plane several years later, Many saw the opportunity to incorporate this new invention into warship instead of balloons. Eugene Ely experimented with the possibility of flying a Certus Model D from the deck of USS Birmingham in 1910, and he succeeded in doing so. He also landed on USS Pennsylvania in 1911. Then the idea of using glide planes on the water began. When they take off, they use services on the ship deck, and when they return, they landed on the surface of the water and are then lifted by the cranes on the ship's deck to prepare them for the next takeoff. How does aircraft carriers protect herself from the threat? 1. Sailing speed. 2. Armoring the aircraft. 3. Air defense and countermeasure. 4. The capacity of its aircraft. 5. Accompanying naval vessel. 6. Continuous movement.